Well, hi, this is John Sarver, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on Introduction to Wind Power. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, and I used to work in the Michigan Energy Office, where one of my responsibilities was to promote wind power. As you can see from the first slide, there are wind turbines of various size. The ones up in the left corner are whirly-doodles that are made in Ann Arbor. Obviously, they're small wind turbines. They produce enough power for the LED lights that are in the blades so that you get those kind of beautiful circles. The small wind turbines to the right is a 2.5 kilowatt wind turbine, and actually produced enough power for that Prius over the course of a year. Most wind turbines in Michigan and other parts of the country are large utility scale wind turbines, like the ones you see down below in the picture in the thumb. Where does Michigan get its electricity? You can see the bottom portion of the graph is coal, and it has been steadily decreasing over the years. Natural gas has increased as a source for electric generation to compensate for some of the losses of coal. And at the same time, we started seeing renewable energy come into play. You can see the wind at the very top of the chart as it gradually grows over time. A law was passed in Michigan in 2008 that required the utilities to get 10% of their electric generation from renewable energy sources by 2015. And that's when you started getting utility scale wind farms developed in Michigan. That law was revised in 2016, and the mandate was increased from 10% to 15%. Renewable energy in Michigan, as you can see historically, we've used wood and hydro power as renewable energy sources in Michigan. But then we started using wind, and it has significantly increased over time. So now it's the major source for renewable energy for electric generation in Michigan. And as you see also, solar has started to appear in recent years. Some trends in power generation. Coal is being phased out by 2030. Nuclear is too expensive, and there's the issue of long-term storage of waste. Natural gas is cheap now, but it's likely will go up in price in the future. Wind and solar will continue to go down in price and become even more competitive. And we'll see an increasing use of batteries and storage to make wind and solar work, because wind and solar are variable, and you need some mechanism to kind of store the power or manage the variable load. Wind right now is the cheapest source of new power generation, as you can see with the blue bar to the left. Solar is very competitive also. Natural gas can be competitive, but it is becoming less competitive. Coal is more expensive, and nuclear by far is much more expensive. Why wind energy? Well, it's a Michigan resource, and it's a resource that has many economic benefits in addition to the environmental benefits. If you look at 133 turbines in Gratiot County, a wind farm, that wind farm provides $50 million in taxes over 20 years, more than the county's 10 biggest taxpayers combined. In addition, there's $2 million in annual lease payments to 240 property owners. Looking at overall in the state of Michigan, we have 139 companies in the wind industry, providing jobs, good paying jobs. And one is Ventower in Monroe. You can see in the picture below that some of the tower sections are on rail cars. There are a number of Michigan wind farms, and most are concentrated in the thumb area, as you can see in the map. There is another concentration in Gratiot County, and then there are some wind farms in northern Michigan and the UP. As of now, we have Wind farms provide almost 2,500 megawatts of power, and they are comprised of 1,224 wind turbines. Wind turbines have over 8,000 components, and so it provides a really good opportunity for Michigan manufacturers to make some of those components. Wind farm construction is a big ordeal, big undertaking. As you can see to the left, there's a significant amount of concrete that's needed for the foundation. And then you need large cranes in order to lift the tower sections in place, lift the nacelle up on top of the tower. The nacelle is where you house the wind generator and other equipment. And then, of course, you need a crane in order to lift the 3 blades to the top of the tower. Wind speed matters a lot for production. You can see the formula for the power in the wind. It's 1/2 the air density times the area that's swept by the blades. And then the effect of the wind speed is a cube factor. So wind speed does really matter. And also, the longer the blades, the larger the area that you have to capture the wind. Obstructions can really make a big difference. Here in the chart, we see that a house or a tree, has a height of, in this case, H. Okay, the turbulent area is over twice the height of the house, and it has a area of turbulent flow almost 20 times the height. And so it's very important to get good production to have wind turbines as high as possible. There's a number of issues related to siting wind farms. Sound levels is a prominent one. A wind turbine will produce sound at about 50 decibels, which is within the range of normal conversation. For example, an air conditioner outside your house might be providing a sound of 70 decibels. Now, there has been many claims that wind turbines provide all sorts of very negative health effects, dizziness, nausea. There is no scientific evidence to kind of show a causation. Now, the sound that's produced from wind turbines, yeah, it can be at any time. It can be at night, in the middle of the night. And so it can disturb people's sleep, and it can be annoying. And of course, that can have some health impacts. But there's no scientific evidence to directly link the sound or the infranoise from wind turbines to negative health impacts. Another thing that people are concerned about is impact on wildlife, particularly birds and bats. And there have been some very bad examples of siting of wind turbines in California and other parts of the country. Many of those were early wind turbines. In the Midwest, where we have flatter territory, they actually have very minimal impacts. Studies have shown that 2 to 3 birds are killed by a turbine per year. And if you look at the chart to the right, you'll see that here's the cause of bird fatalities. For every 10,000 fatalities, more than half of them come from buildings and windows. And then domestic cats are number 2 on the list. And then high tension lines, vehicles, pesticides, communication towers, they all create more fatalities than wind turbines. There have been some bad incidents in Pennsylvania and West Virginia where wind turbines have been put on ridges. Bats like to feed in those areas. And so they basically are taking measures in order to minimize the bat fatalities. One way to do that is that don't let wind turbines operate in low wind speeds when bats do their feeding. Well, the wind doesn't always blow, but one thing to keep in mind is that all power plants need backup. People sometimes talk about, oh, that wind farm needs a fossil fuel power plant to back it up. Well, that's not how the electric grid system works. The whole system is backed up as a whole because, at any time, a large nuclear power plant or coal power plant could go down. And there has to be reserves in order to compensate for losing that power. So when we have the situation like we have in Michigan now, where we're getting about 10% of our electricity from renewable energy resources, there's no extra storage or extra reserves that are needed. Now, at some point, when we have a large amount of solar and wind, yes, we'll have to kind of have more storage and manage the variability in a number of ways. One thing that helps, solar and wind power are complementary. Solar will produce more power in the summer during the day. Wind will produce more power like in the fall and in the evenings. And that helps to kind of deal with the variability. The electric grid is getting much smarter so that it can kind of deal with this variability. In the larger areas that share power, the better. Maybe the wind isn't blowing in Michigan, but maybe the wind is blowing in Nebraska, and that electricity can be used here in Michigan. And of course, storage can be very helpful. When we think of storage, we think of batteries, but we have a large storage facility already in Michigan, the Ludington pumped hydro facility. And it acts basically as a big battery. At night, when there's excess power, water is pumped up into the reservoir. And when power is needed during the day, the water is let go and we produce power. Offshore wind energy will be coming to Michigan at some time in the future. At the present time, we don't have any wind turbines in the Great Lakes. As you can see from this map, actually Michigan has jurisdiction over large parts of the Great Lakes. And so there's great opportunities. Someday we will have wind turbines in the Great Lakes, and they'll probably be floating wind turbines because the Great Lakes are pretty deep. The advantage with offshore wind energy is that the winds are stronger and more consistent. The only offshore wind installation in the United States is the 30 megawatt wind farm near Block Island in Rhode Island. But a lot of other offshore wind is being planned for the East Coast, all the way from Massachusetts down to the Carolinas. Now, offshore wind power has been in Europe for a long time now and has been a major source of power for them. A lot of people are now talking about 100% renewable energy for electric generation, and we're kind of struggling, thinking in terms of how we would do that. Here's a plan for Traverse City, which would be accomplished over the next 10 years. As you can see, this plan has a number of different sources, but wind is a major source, the green bar there, and solar is also a major source of future power. Stanford University looked at this issue of 100% renewable energy for electric generation and looked at each state and how it might be accomplished. When they looked at Michigan in the year 2050, they were looking at maybe solar being 27%, onshore wind 40%, offshore wind 31%, and a small amount of wave and hydropower. Now, these sorts of calculations are based on the idea that you do a lot of energy efficiency, make your system your buildings, your electric grid as efficient as possible. You use demand response, which is shifting when power is used or cycling it off and on in order to kind of manage peak loads. You use storage in order to store power and then use it when it's needed. And you need a very smart grid to manage the increased complexity of the grid. Well, that has been my kind of introduction to wind power. I hope it's been helpful to you. Thank you.